We are joined by Alex Brink, former quarterback of Washington State University, as we preview Washington State football coming into the year. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. It means a lot to me, my friend. You were my quarterback when I was at Washington State, so thank you for the memories, amigo.
Boy, happy to be here. Happy to hear that, more importantly, and big time go Cougs.
Yeah, go Cougs, brother. You know, we talked about this earlier. Are we feeling like we're that old now? Like that was so long ago that we are now dinosaurs?
Brother, I turned 40 this year, so yes, I'm feeling very old, and it is many moons ago, as I like to tell people, but it is fun to relive those days to some degree, but yes, they get further and further in the rearview mirror.
Let's dive right in this. Look, we talked to Oregon State yesterday, and Oregon State and Washington State are kind of married to each other for better or for worse, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, due to the landscape, and it feels like Oregon State's kind of had a rough year last year and is kind of coming in with momentum this year, to where it feels like Washington State is almost the opposite of that. What's your overall vibe of the program, feelings, insight, thoughts on this new chapter of Washington State football?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I think there are some parallels to what Oregon State went through last year with a lot of turnover, new coaching staff, all the challenges Oregon State and Washington State are facing at a surface level with this new era of college football. And so, I think there's some trepidation for Coug fans around what this season is going to look like. I will say the kind of early returns on Jimmy Rogers, the new coach, and his staff seem to be really positive in a way. And I think Jake Dicker did a nice job, but there seems to be a breath of fresh air around the program, both from players, staff, kind of all of the above, alumni and fans. And so there is some excitement in that sense, but you really just don't know what the product on the field is going to look like because of all the transfers, because of new systems, offensively and defensively, and then the obvious challenges of playing a schedule that I don't know that a schedule like this has ever had to be played. Washington State's got just a really unique set of games that and travel and all the things. So, there's a lot of question marks.
Brink, I don't want to relitigate the destruction of the Pac-12, but I heard Mike Haas.
Oh, please, can we?
Yeah,
I know. Because I would love to do that.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun one.
No, I want to ask you on a personal level, though, because I heard Mike Haas basically just, bleep up and down Oregon and what that rivalry means and where things are. Where are you at with this personally? You had blood, sweat, and tears for that program. So where are you at with this, with where Washington State finds themselves right now and kind of the future of just not just the program, but holistically what their lot in life is now and going forward?
Sure. And I think probably Mike and I have very similar outlooks because, it's not just about my time at Washington State, right? Like I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. I grew up going to Oregon football games when there was, 18,000 people in the stands. I grew up on West Coast Pac-10 and Pac-12 football. I chose, to go play in the Northwest because I wanted to stay on the West Coast and I wanted to play in that conference with all of the history and all of the pageantry. So, when that fateful day came and, the powers that be chose to blow up 100 plus years of history and rivalries and all the things, I was obviously really disappointed. And then to see it unfold from a Washington State perspective and kind of see, the fallacy behind the argument, right? That, it's about eyeballs. Well, Washington State's one of the most watched football teams on the West Coast and in the country, right, when they play in the right windows. And then, it's about getting paid more. Well, half the teams that left are getting paid half shares at the conferences that they're at, and the chances that they get full shares when you get to 2029 is probably slim to none for most of those programs. And so, and then, it's the media deal, and let's look at all the media rights deals that are eventually going to pan out. I think the people at the top, and it's not just Oregon or Washington or UCLA and USC. I mean, there was obviously failed leadership at the Pac-12 level with Larry Scott, was that they didn't have the foresight to realize that the brand value of the Pac-12 was strong enough to survive, especially over the longevity of what is going to be a new look college football, but they couldn't get the right people to the table to have that conversation. And in the end, Washington State and Oregon State obviously are the ones that bear the brunt of that decision making. And I'm thankful that Washington State and Oregon State have had great leadership to navigate through this to this point. And I think they are going to come out better in the long run on the other side, especially in this new Pac-12 arrangement.
Alex Brink joins us chatting Washington State football. And let's dive into this season right here. I got some crazy stats to throw at you. I don't know if you've seen them or know these, but I'm curious your take on how, maybe from a quarterback's perspective or from Jimmy Rogers' perspective, how you go about this. 10 conferences represented on the schedule, 3 Eastern time zone games, 2 of them are in Virginia. You face 5 quarterbacks on the Davey O'Brien list, 7 bowl teams from last year, 3 Power 4 teams, and 70 new players on a roster and a brand new coaching staff. For a team that seems a little volatile, a little scary season walking in, how do you, if you're the quarterback, if you're, say, sounds like Zevi's going to get the job, if you're him, how do you navigate that? How do you walk through that without just, I heard you chuckle in the background, without saying, oh man, we're hosed?
Well, yeah, I mean, part of it is the personal level where, I'm the broadcast analyst for the team for the radio broadcast, so I got a lot of travel ahead of me this fall, which is not ideal. But, no, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You got to go play in the Grove against Ole Miss. You got to travel out to, Virginia is not a great team, but that's a lot of travel and it's a long ways to go. And, some other tough games definitely on that schedule, at North Texas and stuff like that, not to mention the Apple Cup at home and some other tough matchups with Oregon State. So, but it's been done, right? And the way I would compare it, the most recent example I would compare it to is Kurt Cignetti out at Indiana, right? Huge turnover at Indiana. You bring most of your roster with you, get a transfer quarterback coming in, and you do some really special things, I think, in the Big Ten. It was not as tough of a schedule, but you managed the transfer portal and the process and the change, I think, really well. And so I think if you're Jimmy Rogers, obviously that's like the best case scenario. You feel like you brought an upgrade of players from a championship level team, although at a lower level in South Dakota State. You feel like those players you brought can compete at the highest levels. You hold over some players from the previous regime, backfill with a few transfers in the portal, and you hope that pot gets mixed together and you sprinkle in a little magic, and you win a lot of ball games. And I think the challenge is obviously, in my opinion, going to mostly be around the travel and playing away from Pullman, but you do get, some good matchups at home. And so if you win those games and you split on the road, then it could be a really nice season.
Brink, you have a unique perspective as a quarterback, obviously at the school. When I look at Washington State and Oregon State, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, the kind of paths they've taken in the transfer portal, they seem to have an intersection of where guys are, but coming off of different things. In Washington State the last couple of years, it's been the ascension of guys that kind of diamonds in the rough in Cam Ward and John Mateer. Where at Oregon State, it's maybe guys that had higher profiles earlier in the career with DJ and now Malik that are maybe coming back down, but it seems like those guys are kind of in this, like in the same realm. Can you kind of speak to just the difference in the tactics that kind of both schools are kind of taking with that transfer portal and what they're kind of looking at? The risk of flight with a guy like Mateer or a guy like Cam Ward, whereas if you get a guy maybe that isn't delivering as much earlier in the career as like a DJ or a Malik Murphy, that you're hoping can kind of ascend back up.
Well, I think about it like this. This has been kind of my soapbox around the transfer portal era and kind of NIL to some degree, is that, actually what has been created in the current status is more parity across college football, right? Because in the past, pre-transfer portal, Nick Saban in Alabama would, have a roster full of 4-stars and 5-stars that were stuck there, right? And now, because you have the freedom of movement, you see a lot of players that, for good or bad reasons or success or failures, doesn't really matter, they end up, right, spread out across the country. And so the number of athletes in college football is still the same, right? And the roster spots are still the same. So even though Washington State is losing a guy like Cam Ward, you're able to backfill with a guy like John Mateer. And then you're eventually going to need a backfill for John Mateer. That's where the challenge comes in, right? Which is what you're alluding to, is that Washington State and Oregon State are going to struggle to compete and maintain that talent for more than, a year or two in the current state of college football. But if you get it right, you can win in that year or two window with guys like Mateer and Cam Ward, or hopefully Malik Murphy for Washington or for Oregon State. And so I think the tactic is is interesting because you can find high quality players like Malik Murphy who got put in, frankly, a really bad spot at Duke where he basically gets forced out. Malik Murphy's a fantastic player and a great human being that, in my opinion, Oregon State gets just a boon to have him come in and be the starting quarterback. That's such a great pickup, but it is the reality of college football. You can get players like that with the transfer portal. For Washington State, they have another quarterback on the roster, Julian Duggar, from Pitt, a young player, played just in the bowl game last year, had over 80 yards rushing, 2 passing touchdowns, elite athlete. You look at a player like him, could he be a quarterback of the future for Washington State? Possibly. And you get him, like you said, kind of on the upside potentially of his career.
Alex, we'll get you out on a couple more here. What's a successful season for Wazoo this year? Is it a bowl game? Is it just stability for the program? Is it identifying talent? Is this a year that's okay to take a step back? What do you see as a successful route for the 2025 year?
I think it's a bowl game. I think this day and age, even though, obviously with the CFP and all the things, like, maybe a bowl is not as prestigious as it used to be, but it always gets talked about the things that come with a bowl game. You get extra practices, right, for your young players. You stay relevant during the transfer portal window when you maybe need to bring, get guys into that late window in December. You stay nationally relevant as a program because you're playing more football and you're in the mix. And so I think, you want to – that's it. Like, if you miss a bowl game, you can definitely explain it away for a million different reasons, but it still doesn't change the fact that your national profile will have changed because you didn't go to a bowl game. And so I think for Washington State and Oregon State, it's vital that they stay in that national conversation through this year as they head towards some stability with the rebuilt Pac-12 next year.
I'll leave you with one last Martin Stadium question. Look, we're kids of no alcohol in the stadium unless you found your own way to handle that. Are you
would never have done that.
Never would have done that. Never. Are you a sell booze in the stadium or a re-entry kind of guy?
No, sell booze in the stadium 1,000,000,000%. And I'll tell you why. Because, again, Washington State, and this is very specific to Washington State, has battled this for years.
Decades,
right? Yes,
decades.
Decades. It's a great place to tailgate and watch a football game and experience like all the things with the RV lot. I get that, but we can do that before the game and after the game. We don't have to do it during the game, but let's make sure Coug fans have their libations and are able to enjoy a beverage while they're watching the game and get Martin Stadium rocking. I think it's fantastic. It was a great move. I understand I understand both sides of it, but it's going to make the game day experience so much better for Washington State and ultimately the university and the players.
Well, thank you, Alex, for joining us. That's Alex Brink, former quarterback, Washington State. You can catch him on the broadcast for Coug Games. I know I do. I love hearing your voice, brother. So thanks for coming on. And, down the line, if things get spicy, we'll bring you back. Sound good?
Guys, let's do it. I'm always available.
All right. Love it. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
All right, that's Alex Brink. Big shout out to him. Him and I are birthday buddies.
There
We
you go.
we have the same birthday. We were born on the same day of the same year. He was
that.
like, I turned 40 this year. And I was like, you know what? So did I.
All right.